Hello, my name's Keely Brennan, and today I'm going to be presenting on Louis the 15th. So a little bit of background on Louis the 15th and who he was. Louis the 15th was the King of France. He also was known as Le Bien-Aimé, which translates to the beloved in English. He was born on February 15th, 1710, and died on May 10th, 1774. Louis XV was the son of Louis the Duke of Burgundy and Marie Adelaide of Savoy, and he was also the great son of Louis XIV, which was the king who ruled before him. So a little bit about his personal life and family. Louis XV married Marie Leczenska, who was the daughter of Stanislaus I, who was the deposed king of Poland. Louis XV was married on September 25th, when Louis was 15 and Marie was 22. Between the years of 1727 to 1737, they had a total of 10 children, which consisted of 8 girls and 2 boys. But out of those 10 children, only 6 daughters and 1 son survived to adulthood. Again, a little bit more about his personal life and interests. Louis XV enjoyed collecting trinkets, such as clocks and precision instruments. He was really involved in science, enjoyed learning about it. He also enjoyed geography, and his geographers worked closely with astronomers to make detailed maps of the country. He also supported and backed maritime and scientific expeditions. Although Louis XV was married, he had a few mistresses. These are just a couple of the notable ones. His first mistress was Pauline Félicité de Maillet-Nesle. She was his mistress from 1739 to 1741. His second mistress was Madame de Pompadour, who lived in Versailles from 1745 until her death in 1764. Not only was she the royal mistress, but she also played the role as an advisor for Louis XV. And the little fun fact about her is that in 1763, she persuaded Louis XV to commission the construction of a new palace. This palace was the Petit Trianon. And this palace is notable because it eventually became the place that Queen Marie Antoinette resided in. And then his third mistress was Madame du Barry. She became Louis XV's official mistress in 1768, 4 years after Madame de Pompadour's death. And she lived in Versailles and remained at his side until his death in 1774. Louis had chosen mistresses that had quite a bit of political influence throughout his life. His first mistress, Pauline Félicité de Maillet-Nesle, was one of the sponsors of the war party that brought France into the War of the Austrian Succession. And then his second mistress, Madame de Pompadour, also had a great deal of political influence that she was involved in that lasted until she died. A little bit about his reign. Louis XV became heir to the throne after his father and only surviving brother died. Louis's father and mother died of measles, while his older brother, the Grand Dauphin, also died after contracting measles, and they tried to do a bloodletting asphyxiation on him, but that failed. Louis XV inherited the throne on September 1st, 1715, after Louis XIV died. Louis XV reigned from 1715 to 1774, which was about 59 years. His reign was the second longest reign in the history of France. It was only exceeded by the previous ruler, Louis XIV, who had ruled between 1643 to 1715, which is 72 years. During his reign, he was controversial because he was known for causing the decline in the crown's moral and political authority. It has also been noted that his rule led to the decline of royal authority, which eventually led to the French Revolution in 1789. Because Louis inherited the throne so young, royal ordinance stated that the Kingdom of France must be ruled by a regent until the given king had turned 14. So that's where Philip II, Duke of Orleans, comes in. Since Louis XV was only 5 years old when he inherited the throne, Louis XV's great uncle, Philip II, Duke of Orleans, was appointed as regent. Typically, the title of regent is usually appointed to the closest living adult relative to the given king, and is usually a mother or uncle, but his mother had previously died of measles, so she was taken out of the equation. Louis XIV had not wanted Philip II to govern because he had distrusted him, which made him a not popular choice, especially since he was an atheist and a libertine. Louis XIV had wanted his illegitimate son, the Duke of Maine, to rule. And since the laws of succession had been changed by Louis XIV to state that his oldest surviving male descendant could take the throne if the direct line of succession became extinguished. So right before Louis XIV's death, he wrote in his will to restrict the powers of the regent, because obviously the direct line of succession was not going to become extinguished. In his will, he stated that the nation would be governed by a regency council, which would consist of 14 members until the new king turned 14. In his will, it also stated that all future decisions would have to be decided by a majority vote. And since it was a majority vote, that allowed the Duke of Maine to rule France, or would possibly allow the Duke of Maine to rule France for the following 8 years. But luckily, Philip saw what was coming and talked to the Parliament to have Louis XIV's will annulled. In exchange for having the will annulled, he would restore the Parliament's right to challenge the king's decisions. But this specific decision, if you look into the future, created a lot of conflict between the Parliament and king, which is said to have contributed to the start of the French Revolution in 1789. But looking back, the Parliament accepted and annulled Louis XIV's will, and Philip's full regent powers were restored. Another notable figure in Louis XV's life was Cardinal de Fleury. Cardinal de Fleury was originally Louis XV's tutor, but eventually he came to help the king rule between 1726 and 1743. Fleury helped to dictate the choices being made and helped with many other things regarding Louis XV's family, such as sending his daughters to school, and so much more. During this period of reign, behind closed doors, there was a growing opposition from many of the noble members of the Parliament. They had felt as if their privileges and powers were being reduced. Fleury passed quite a few controversial laws also during his time helping reign, which further helped and caused silent opposition to continue to grow behind closed doors. But during his time working with Louis XV, Fleury helped make sure that Louis knew what a stable government looked like. because during this period of reign, Fleury had kept the same Minister of War, Controller of Currency, and Minister of Foreign Affairs. And over the span of the 19 years he was helping, he had a total of 13 ministers, while in comparison, the king, in the span of 31 years, had 43 ministers. Thank you.